Well, let me just start out by saying, and I think the best quote that was on the face of it, we're not advocating violence, we're advocates for not being victims. And again, this is not a statement that promotes violence. In fact, I would like to see no violence, whether it's violence on the part of a violent perpetrator or violence by a lawfully armed, law-abiding citizen or violence by a police officer. I mean, it's difficult, you know, even when police officers are confronted with the decision of whether or not to use deadly force. That's not something that they go to work to look for, and certainly that holds true for law-abiding citizens who certainly don't go through their day looking for an opportunity. So I'm not an advocate for violence, but I am an advocate for when faced with a dangerous situation, one that offers or presents an imminent threat to life or a threat of great bodily harm, that one protect themselves. And so critics will say, well, Chief, are you saying that the Detroit Police Department can't do its job? That is absolutely an untrue, inaccurate statement. I do say that, I don't care, you name the city in America, whether it's Los Angeles, Cincinnati, places I have worked, New York, a place that I've visited that has 38,000 police officers, a police officer cannot and will not be on every corner, in front of every house, every business in the city. That's just not realistic. So when a person who is a law-abiding citizen who has a CPL or CCW, depending where you live, they're not going to tell an armed suspect, stop for a moment, I need to dial 911 so I can get a police officer here. They deal with an imminent threat to life. So with that, that's the only thing I'd have to say. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Why are you holding this press conference? Are you receiving flack from your comments in that article, and if you are, from whom?
Let me just start out. I didn't call for this press conference. In fact, I was told that many of you wanted to interview me, so I'm not holding it. And candidly, I haven't received any flack. More accurately, since this article was released, and even before that, I get stopped by many community members who live, work in the city of Detroit, and many community members who live outside the city of Detroit who have applauded the position because they felt like enough is enough. They're tired of being victims. And here's the other piece that I will continue to say. I think we need to change the conversation. It's not about law-abiding citizens with guns. It's more about how do we get guns out of the hands of criminals. It's that simple for me. Too many violent criminals are in possession of guns, and that's the problem. We should talk about the victims. This is not about going out and creating vigilantism. I don't support it. I've been very vocal on the whole issue of vigilantism. I think it's cowardly. Self-appointed law enforcement officers. The Detroit Police Department, as you know, looking at our statistics, has been very effective in not only reducing crime, but making this city safer. And this is not to say, well, we can't do it. We are doing it. Is it perfect? No. Of course it's not. There's crime in every major city in America.
Did you know, Chief, that... Go ahead. I was just going to say, I know that there were some of the statistics mentioned in the article, but can you kind of go over them for us? I mean, when you talk about it being safer and justifiable homicide instances where we have seen homeowners take...
Well, we've seen, and I don't have those stats in front of me. I want to say we've had... Do you have it in...
It's been 8 incidents.
And I think it's a little bit higher. We've seen, right now, year to date, we're seeing an increase of 2 justifiable homicides. Now, we as police department, we don't make a decision on whether a homicide is justifiable. That's a prosecutor decision. But when you compare the stats from last year, we're up to, certainly the number of CPL issuances increased before I arrived. I mean, when you look at last year's justifiable homicides, I wasn't here, so it can't be attributed to anything that I have said. but I can tell you that violent crime is down. In fact, we've seen like 23% reduction in homicide, double-digit reduction in non-fatal shootings. When you talk about the violent crime of carjacking, we're down, I think, 15% year to date. Probably the steepest reduction in carjacking incidents since the start of the year. So the crime is moving in the right direction. For a lot of reasons. I can tell you, because you have a police department that's not engaging in depolicing. When I got here, police officers wanted to be police officers. When I talked to different police officers, I said, what do you want? They said, we want to be police officers again. So when you look at the monthly operations that we're conducting, the fact that we've launched a ComStat unit, the fact that police officers are targeting in a very strategic way the right individuals who are creating the violence, we're reducing crime. And I got to believe and know, statistics show it, research shows it, I should say, that there's been research done that armed, law-abiding citizens can, and I use the word can, be a deterrence to violent crime. There's no secret in the city of Detroit that there are armed citizens. And I believe that has a deterring effect on violence. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but now suspects know, and again, this predates me, suspects know that if they make a poor decision to engage in a violent crime, they could encounter an armed citizen.
How does it feel to be the face of NRA?
How does it feel? I have no problem. Long as my only concern is it accurate? Is it correct? I've had a chance to read the article. It's right. It's spot on.
Why'd they choose you?
Well, so I'm told, and maybe you've done the research. I don't think there's many major city police chiefs that have taken this position.
There are those who may contend that the NRA and gun ownership and the proliferation of it is counterintuitive to what you're hoping in terms of getting guns off the streets, and just having more weapons isn't necessary. You know, it's a tough argument either way. But how might you counter those that say those that favor guns and the proliferation of legal guns might lead to just more guns on the street and a greater problem for you as a law enforcement community?
We're talking about law-abiding citizens. Law-abiding citizens, very different than criminals in possession of guns. So if we get guns out of the hands of criminals, that's the key. Law-abiding citizens are not committing street robberies. They're not out engaging in homicides and shootings, felonious assaults. And when it does happen, certainly we will take appropriate action. It's just, you know, I used the analogy in an earlier story. So someone uses an automobile in a reckless manner, and during the course of using this automobile, there are several fatalities. Does that mean we should remove automobiles from the street because of the actions of one or a small minority? When you look at the criminal population, it's a minority population. Let's talk about and find solutions together. And this is my message. Solutions together in getting guns out of the hands of criminals.
Let me try a question this way, Chief. You mentioned that you're taking sort of a rare position.
I wouldn't say rare.
Okay, but not many major city police chiefs would take this position.
So I'm told.
Yeah, okay. So how do you respond to some who would say, since you're comfortable being on the cover of the NRA magazine, that you're pro-gun, and are you, as chief, empowering law-abiding people to arm themselves if they live in your city?
I'm pro-Second Amendment. I didn't frame it. I didn't write it. It's not a James Craig law. The framers framed it, 200 plus years ago. I'm in my 50s, so certainly I wasn't around then. I'm pro-safety. I am pro-life. I'm pro-law-abiding citizens staying alive, having the ability to protect themselves from dangerous situations. I'm pro that. This is nothing about reckless. This is not me promoting go out and buy a gun. But I'm saying if you're law-abiding and it's your decision and responsible, you know, clearly when you look at some of the significant incidents that have happened across this country, some large-scale shooting incidents, sometimes it's involved the mentally disabled. What if, in the instance of one of these large-scale incidents, that there was a law-abiding citizen who could have acted to protect the lives of so many who lost their lives? What if?
Where do you draw the line? Are you in favor of open carry?
It's the law. I support the law. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that everybody should carry a gun. Certainly, it's a matter, I consider it a matter of being responsible. We've heard the incidents of accidental discharges, someone being shot because of mishandling a weapon, or certainly hands or guns falling into the hands of our children because someone hasn't been responsible. Those things are terrible. Tragic incidents. I'm talking about law-abiding citizens. Law-abiding citizens that are responsible. And we also have to consider the issue of individuals who are mentally impaired. That's a concern. That's a major concern. In fact, my very best friend lost his life, the first LAPD SWAT officer, was shot and killed going into an active shooter situation where the individual who was mentally impaired had already killed 3 of his family members. And we hear these kind of stories. Tragic situation.
You know, the NRA, has its fans and its detractors, obviously, and many of whom disagree with them and their stance on gun control. And these are very real issues, especially after Sandy Hook, et cetera. We're talking about mental illness, we're talking about all those things, and yet now the NRA is going to hold you up and say, this is our poster boy. And I know
I'm not at all troubled. When I read the article, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from many who live here in the city of Detroit who support my comments. And really, this is about pro-life. Let's just call it pro-life. Self-protection. Some take offense of me saying good Americans or good Detroiters. And I say to those, the critics, let's talk about the 90-year-old woman who was beaten with a 2x4 in her home, robbed of probably her Social Security money, $70. And then the violent perpetrator, a predator, beats her again with this 2x4. What do we say to her? Does she have a right to life? Do we have any responsibility to support her? And then we say, what would we call someone who's engaging in that level of violence? A violent predator. Or what about and I talked about this, the 74-year-old man who walks to a gas station every day just to get a scratch off. His quality of life is being to walk from home to a place he's comfortable. He's accosted by an armed suspect or 2 armed suspects. They rob him, and as he's complying, they shoot him.
So what would you say to your friends or family members who are living in some of these tough areas of Detroit about having CCW?
I have no problem if they're law-abiding.
What would you recommend it to your family members?
Absolutely. I would have no problem with it. My family lives in the city of Detroit. They're responsible, law-abiding citizens. That is their right. I don't write laws.
Do you think you're making the city a more attractive place? Mayor Mike Duggan is auctioning off the home and bringing in homes and bringing more people into the city. Do you think that you're helping to make the city a more attractive place?
Absolutely. Let's talk about what was going on before I got here. High crime, 50-minute to emergency calls for service, calls being held, 40 to 60 calls being held. In fact, we know, factually, the police didn't even respond in some instances. So you want to talk about making the city attractive? Was that attractive? Or how about the underinvestment in the police officers who are committed to do this work, to protect this city? The underinvestment. And am I making the city attractive, or I'm playing a role in it? Now I should turn that question back. I think so. I think that now that we have a 70, 80% clearance rate to homicides, where we were sitting on 11%, where homicides would occur and they couldn't solve the case. And now, contrary to what's being told, we have a community that's engaged. We have a community that calls and talks to this police department because now they have confidence that the police department is going to respond. I would say to you that this police department is becoming and will be recognized as one of the premier law enforcement agencies in this country. I stand by that.
Would you take another swing at the definition in your mind of vigilantism? I've heard you on different occasions, including today, call it cowardice.
Self-appointed law enforcement, engaging in law enforcement activities, self-appointed, usually in large groups, cowardly, just like, well, not just like, but just when we talk about the criminals who are armed with weapons, who target from a place of opportunity, where they will target seniors. Why do they target? They're cowardly, and they do it in numbers of 2 to 3, armed, because they feel that's an easy target. And now they're being met with resistance.
My definition or thought of vigilantism is somebody who is trying to combat crime by shooting those who they believe are perpetrators. Am I misconstruing what you're talking about?
I don't think that the definition has anything to do with shooting. I think the definition of vigilantism, and I don't have it in front of me, but self-appointed law enforcement. We're not talking about self-appointed. Law enforcement to enforce the law. So, you know the story, I guess, within the last couple of weeks, and certainly I can't pass judgment because that's a matter that's still being reviewed by the district attorney's office, but there was someone who was a CPL holder who was faced with a violent encounter. Suspect had what she believed to be a gun. When she pointed her weapon, the suspect retreated, and certainly during the retreat she gave chase. There were some shots fired. That's a very different scenario. When you talk about the imminent threat to life, meaning that you believe, you articulate that right now my life is in peril, right now, this moment. So to create a nexus between vigilantism and being faced with an imminent threat, where's the connection? Because I'm lost. Maybe I need to get my Webster out because I'm confused.
Thank you. I just wanted
Yeah.
clarification.
Is there a consideration that the Cinco de Mayo shooting might be a self-defense or justifiable?
That's certainly a call by the district attorney's office.
Is there a reason there hasn't been charges or anything that you know?
I'm not the district attorney. That's the decision by the district attorney. I respect the role that the district attorney plays, and that's a decision that will have to be made from that office.
So will they get back to you when they make a decision? Or
Of course.